Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are listening to the Podium Podcast from. Welcome back to another video, another episode, another, race review. This time it is about the 2025 Canadian Grand Prix. And I don't know if you could tell by my just tone and just the podcast coming out probably a bit later, but I am pretty fuming at this race because a lot has happened. It wasn't really the best race to begin with. The first 60 odd laps were pretty dull, but boy, do those 10 laps deliver around Canada, because we have got a lot to talk about. But ultimately, as well, we'll get into it now. But both McLarens did come together. They said it was going to happen coming into this weekend. Lando even said in the press conference on Thursday that it's bound to happen. Well, there is your answer. It has happened. Papaya rules have gone straight out the window. It has been a really poor weekend for McLaren, but there's a lot to unpack and debrief coming out of Canada. But let's start then probably with the biggest talking point about how I'm going to say actually start. Let's start talking about how it was probably the most boring race of the season until lap 60. Russell on pole, Verstappen in second. You would have thought that coming into the first corner, it was going to be chaos. But to be fair, they kept to themselves. Russell got initially the better start and managed to carry that momentum into the first corner, whilst Verstappen neatly slotted in behind and took second, whilst Antonelli made an impressive move on Piastri going down into turn 3, which was quite pivotal for the race to get his first podium of the season. After that, and it was a two-stop strategy for all the top run. Pretty much everyone was a two-stop strategy. This then led to pretty much everyone spreading out evenly amongst themselves. Not really much on-track action at the front, and everyone pitted. They did their two-stop. The only thing is that, I mean, even the commentators were talking about it, but how Leclerc and Norris were started on the hards, which meant that their first stint was really, really strong, which meant at the end of the race, whilst the front runners pitted twice and Lando and Leclerc pitted twice, it was going to come down and boil to a very chaotic 10 laps, because Lando on fresher tyres was going to catch those ahead of him, because he did start in P7 after a very poor qualifying. Then, in the 10 laps, chaos. Absolute chaos. You had Verstappen and Russell at the front getting close to one another, but the main talking point was the battle behind. You had Antonelli, Piastri and Norris all fighting for the last podium spot. It seemed quite difficult to overtake around Montreal, which meant that it was going to be the drivers had to be more strategical in trying to plot a move, which we'll get into now, because I think, let's talk about it. McLaren they've come together in extraordinary fashion. It was going to happen. This is the first probably biggest, people were talking about how, we never get to see Norris and Piastri go and race wheel to wheel. Well, this was probably the first occasion where they genuinely, in a title fight, were racing wheel to wheel properly for position, and it ended up in absolute devastation for Norris. We'll talk about the move now. Of course, this was around only maybe 10 or so laps ago, even less than 10 laps ago, according to what I've written down. Norris was catching Piastri, who was really stuck behind Antonelli, who pulled a strategical blinder with his use of ERS, his use of, DRS, his position of the car. A really, really thoughtful race by Antonelli, which we'll get onto later. But Lando Norris was charging, got to where Piastri was, stuck behind him for a couple of laps, was trying to make a move down the back straight into the Wall of Champions, but would just run out of road. It was just always that little bit too, far behind to make a move. Then he was slot behind Piastri for the Wall of Champions, try and make a move on the main straight, and it always seemed that he was just that too far behind. The only place where I thought personally he could have made a move, which he did in the end, was going into the hairpin before the back straight, because it managed in sector 2. He just seemed a lot more confident and a lot more quicker in that twisty, winding section of the track, which meant that he had probably the best chance was to make a move into the hairpin, which he managed to do. He managed to make the move into the hairpin, send it, which he had to do. It was a move of, I suppose, a person in a title fight. It was a move of a champion, to be fair, because he had to make the move stick. We've seen it countless times where he would just stay behind the car and really wait until the car in front has made an error to make a move, whilst he instead doesn't initiate the move. But he managed to do it. He managed to make the move stick-ish. The only problem is that he was too far deep into the corner to block off the racing line, which meant Piastri could, I suppose, in some sort of way, force a switchback, which meant going down the back straight. Pretty much is a back straight technically. They were side by side going into it. Both had DRS because of Antonelli, who was a second ahead of both of them, but both of them wheel to wheel, not giving each other any room on the back straight. Heading into the Wall of Champions, it was a question of who was going to break first, who was going to, I suppose, be the first one to pull out in that sort of sense. And it was Lando who managed to pull out first. He managed to break, I suppose, on the racing line in just normal fashion, which meant Piastri on the inside made the move into the final chicane. He went a little bit too deep, like Norris, like his teammate, in the final hairpin. Which meant they had a tighter angle to try and force his exit out. He had a tighter exit, which meant Lando could get a great run on him, onto the main straight. Going onto the main straight, it was pretty much Norris trying to, I suppose, find any gap. But with the nature of the main straight, it's not really a straight because it bends to the right after the timing line, which meant that the racing line, which you should normally take, where it goes towards the left, towards the pit wall. Piastri took that racing line because, to be fair, you would. Why wouldn't you take the racing line whilst you're ahead? Norris thought there was a gap. He went for a gap that wasn't there, and it ended up with him crashing into the back of Piastri, him then being chucked into the wall on the left-hand side, and ultimately ruining his race because it ended with DNF because his whole suspension was absolutely shattered. I think the first question we have to ask ourselves was the move on? Absolutely not. The move was not on whatsoever. It was, I suppose, a miscalculation from Norris. I thought, looking back on the replays, and it did seem that he misjudged his gap towards to his teammate. I think when I'm not trying to say that I am a Formula 1 driver, but when I'm racing on the game, if you just look at the track opens up. So what I think he was trying to do was get a great slipstream from his teammate. Then when the track opens up and when the wall, as the track bends to the right for the first corner, move over to the left-hand side and make a move. But what I think happened was that he miscalculated it. He was actually really close behind Piastri, and ultimately he was too far in to back off, and he turned to the left to try and avoid his teammate, and in that sense he kind of hit his teammate on the left rear and then went straight into the wall. It was a very, I suppose, reckless move. I think if he had, I mean, looking back on it, you would have chosen to go to the right-hand side, but it was a rookie almost error. This is something that a world champion should not do. This is something a person definitely fighting for a championship cannot afford to do. You look at the championship now, he is now a whopping 22 points behind his teammate, which in the grand scheme of things you might think, oh god, that's not a lot, that could be a race here and there. But still, he's managed to make his life a lot more difficult for the next couple of races at least, because mentally he's always thinking, god, it's going to take a long, I suppose, a long while for that gap to come down. It also means that Russell and Verstappen, after a very good race with both of them, a 1-2, closes that gap up to Lando, which is mentally, we know how he struggles mentally. in his racing career, but still, it does not make his life easier, and it puts even more stress onto him. We seen in qualifying, even I mean it's almost a recurring theme, a recurring storyline across the 2025 season. But his qualifying was also abysmal. To make a mistake not once but twice in Q3 shows that he does crack under pressure. He he really needs to get out of his own head, and I know it's easier said than done for not just an F1 driver but for any athlete. But when you're constantly making mistakes, and not just in qualifying but even now in the race, made a mistake which ruined his race and has made his championship fight look even weaker. I'm almost speechless in that sort of sense. I don't know what he can do to really help himself. I mean, I saw Nico Rosberg talk to the German media about it, and Rosberg was saying that, oh, well, he did even uh, come out to try and help Norris, but Norris didn't respond to Rosberg's, I suppose, advice and aid. Shows that, does he really want to help himself? I mean, it's it's a difficult situation now, and I think Lando's apologised in the media, which is the right thing to do. It was his fault. Piastri had no sort of, I suppose, bearing on it. Piastri, from what he said, from what his, I suppose, thing was, is that his teammate just drove into the back of him and tried to look for a gap that wasn't even there. It was very fortunate that it didn't ruin Piastri's race as well, because that would have been even more, I suppose, detrimental to McLaren. But still, from McLaren's point of view, anyway, regardless of the race, of the crash, it was a poor weekend from both drivers. Is it down to the drivers? Is it down to the car? Well, I mean, you would think that going into every weekend, which we did think at the start of the season, that McLaren did have every track locked down. They were the favourites going into every circuit. But it seemed that after FP2 and both the Mercedes and the Red Bull catching up to McLaren's pace, it seemed that McLaren didn't have the pace to match both of them in qualifying and in the race, which is, for a championship point of view, ever so better, because that means, I guess, it makes the championship a bit more interesting in that sort of sense, because, I mean, if they carry this form on into the next couple of races, I mean, we've got Austria next, we've got Britain next. I mean, they didn't win there last year for both circuits. I don't know. It seems that it will be a. I don't know if it's a struggle. I think we need to look at the next couple of races to see if it was just a fluke or they genuinely are not the favourites anymore. They still are always in contention for the win, and I'll say that happily for the remainder of the season. McLaren will still be up there, but it does put a lot of pressure on. I think maybe it was also down to drivers as well. Lando did have flaws in qualifying, but also we can't say not say the same for Piastri. Piastri hit the wall in FP3, which mentally going into qualifying does affect you considerably. The Wall of Champions takes a lot of people out, including champions, hence the name. And so, I mean, to be making errors like that, to be hitting the wall, it does affect you. And I mean, it would have taken him probably a little bit of qualifying to regain that confidence, but even in a race, he couldn't get past Antonelli. And I don't know if it was just, maybe lack of confidence in the car, or the car was just genuinely not there. Only time will tell. But, I mean, F1 is always an evolving sport, and if we talk about Red Bull and Mercedes bringing new suspension packages to Montreal, if this is the start of almost a new title fight, then so be it. I mean, if you look at it, Verstappen and Russell are only 30 to 40 points behind Piastri out in front, only 10 of Norris, 10 and 20 of Norris in second. It is always game on for the fight, and if they can continue this form, then they are well into championship contention for sure. But yeah, it was a difficult weekend for McLaren. We talked about the championship, so we also need to talk about Mercedes as well. Mercedes have had probably the best weekend they have had in a while. A 1-3 Antonelli getting his first podium, Russell getting the first win of 2025 for Mercedes, and to be, in all honesty, matching the pace. It wasn't just down to I suppose, luck. Qualifying was exceptional from Russell, and as well for Antonelli, and the race pace was there for Mercedes. Really does show that in their day, in their element, if they can get their setup right, they can be a real threat to both Verstappen and to McLaren's. Verstappen didn't have any answers for Mercedes today, which shows that they did have decent pace. I mean, Russell did check out. He was above 5 seconds to gap to Verstappen behind, which shows that they do have pace. It was really, I suppose, as a neutral fan, great to see, because it does, as I said before, made the championship ever more, I suppose, important, and very, very interesting. Let's go to predictions now, because we haven't talked about predictions a fair amount. Predictions. Okay, qualifying, I put Piastri to be in first. That did not happen. He came third. Norris to be second. He came seventh. Verstappen to be third. He came second, so that was close. Russell to be fourth. He came first. And Antonelli to be fifth. He came fourth. So that is not right. Okay. So for the race, I put Norris and Piastri to make it a 1-2. That did not happen. Russell to be third. That did not happen. Verstappen to be fourth. That did not happen. Leclerc to be fifth, and I did think Charles Leclerc. Let me just bring it up. And I think because Lando crashed, he did manage to finish fifth, and Leclerc did finish fifth, so that is 1 point there. Okay. In the middle of the race, I predicted Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc, and Hamilton to be the top five, and the top five was Norris, Russell, Verstappen, Antonelli. Oh wait, what? Russell, Verstappen, Antonelli, Piastri, Norris. So those two are not the. Nope, not there. Biggest surprise, and I put Mercedes, and I can definitely say that yes, that is 2 ticks there. Red Bull, I did say to be the worst. No, I would not say that. And 2 safety cars, including a VSC. I believe only 1 safety car happened, which means that is not a good prediction. So that means that I've got 3 points coming out of Canada, which is not great for me. Drivers of the week, or just winners of the week, whatever. I might just change it to winners of the week, actually. Winners of the week. And I'm going to have to say Mercedes to be the biggest winner of the week, for sure. P1, P3, a pole position, a fastest lap on top of that, and to get P2 in the Constructors now, to take it from Ferrari, I believe, and to be, I suppose, hopefully showing that they've got raw pace and that they can win just based on merit, really means that they can have some sort of momentum going into Austria and Silverstone in the next doubleheader. And certainly also to get his first podium is great, so a very good weekend for them. Verstappen, I will say, is my next winner of the week, coming out of Canada. Second position was, just on pace, didn't have the pace of Russell, but still to take a second position, to, I suppose, be the biggest winner in terms of the championship fight. His McLaren had a DNF and a P4, means that, to be fair, he did manage to do well and cements his championship fight even further from Canada. So Nico Hulkenberg also, yet again, is a bigger shout for me. Spain, I thought a P5 or P6, whatever, was a fluke, but he's managed to get a P8, which is absolutely incredible from Stake. Managed to just beat his teammate, managed to have a really clean race. I think the 2-stop did manage to work compared to the 1-stop. So yeah, great result, and even more points to take from the 2025 season. Flops of the week now, and I am going to say McLaren have to be the flop of the week. Coming into the weekend, I did generally believe that they were going to be the favourites, but it turns out that they weren't. They were almost the second best team, possibly even third best team out there. A P4 and a DNF is not what they wanted. This is the first non-McLaren podium of the year, which is crazy to say, but it does show that they really did struggle around here, and that they do have certain flaws, which if Mercedes and Red Bull can, I suppose capitalize on, means that it really is game on for the championship if they can continue this form. Hamilton is, I'm going to say, the next flop. Qualified P5, finished P7, P6, sorry. Yeah, really poor. He did hit a groundhog, apparently, which means that he lost 20 points of downforce, which was almost half a tenth a lap. Means that, was very unfortunate there. But to be beaten by your teammate who started almost 2 positions below you did show that there was something generally wrong with the car. He could have capitalized on that so well if he managed to just do normal and not hit a groundhog, because that would have been almost a P5. But still, very unfortunate. But I mean, yeah, it is what it is. He can't really complain. It's just the way it is. Williams, I would say, is another team which had a poor-ish weekend. To be knocked out Q1, unfortunately, with Sainz being impeded by Hadjar was unfortunate. Albon did get into Q3, but then Albon had some sort of retirement problem, which means he had to retire. And then for Sainz to only get 1 point shows that, yeah, it was probably not the best weekend for them. Considering Canada was probably the track where they wanted to go into and do well, because they've done well there in the past. So yeah, really unfortunate for them, it just seems maybe reliability problems might be the problem for them. If we look at the Drivers' Championship now, let's look at the Drivers' Championship, if I can just bring it up. Okay, Drivers' Championship. Okay, so Oscar Piastri is now 22 points ahead of Lando Norris, whilst Verstappen is only, I believe, 76, about 20 odd points behind Lando, and then Russell is another 20 points behind Verstappen, which means that the top, I suppose, top four are separated by, let's just do the maths. The top four are separated by 62 points, which is not a lot, I guess. It takes one pole race from each driver and they are back into it. So, I would say interesting for the championship. And Lando definitely has a lot more pressure on him than ever before. We also got Fernando Alonso moving up the ranks in P16 with 8 points now. After a P7 in Canada, another solid result. And Hadjar, I suppose, is more under threat from Nico Hulkenberg, who's moved up to P11 now with 20 points to his name, all which are scored by, all of Sauber's points are actually scored by Hulkenberg, actually, which shows how much of a great job he is doing. If we look to the constructors now, and McLaren are still miles ahead of Mercedes. Mercedes move up to second, which is interesting, because they are now 16 points ahead of Ferrari, and Red Bull move a little bit further back from Ferrari in fourth. Haas and RB are now on joint points in P6 and P7, and Sauber are only 2 points behind Aston Martin, and Alpine are stuck on 11 points. Well, I think that will wrap up the 2025 Canadian Grand Prix race review. Make sure to like and subscribe and have a simply lovely day. Goodbye.